Some interesting developments, folks. So, reaction from Terrebonne, or is it Terrebonne? I apologize for my francophone dyslect. Even though I took French up to grade 10, it's still a bit off. I'm a bit rusty on the francophone, as they say. Reaction from Terrebonne after Liberals win riding by one vote after a recount. So after Mark Carney was selected on April 28th, there's been numerous ridings that are doing recounts because Elections Canada, who we just did recently an article breaking down some of the malpractices that they were doing, argued that a lot of the ballots were they wrote down wrong and they weren't calculated properly. There was a miscount. So they went to the judges. They did a judicial recount. And this riding in particular is saying that the Liberals won by one vote, one singular vote. So getting into this, says when it comes to elections, some people may ask whether their vote really counts. The Quebec riding of Terrebonne, northeast of Montreal, showed that every vote really does make a difference. After a judicial recount on Sunday, flipped the seat from the Bloc Québécois to the Liberals by a single vote. I think it's going to be some interesting debate going on because of the one vote difference that Bennett Guillardian, who was working in the Terrebonne area Monday. The day after election night on April 29th, Liberal candidate Tantia Auguste was the projected winner of the riding, which is typically a Bloc stronghold. The riding, when flipped back to the Bloc during the validation process, which is different than a recount, with incumbent MP Nathaniel Sinclair Designé defeating Auguste by 44 votes. Canada's chief electoral officer called for a judicial recount on May 7th since the win was less than 0.1% of the votes cast. Danielle Bellond, director of the McGill Institute for the Study of Canada, said that the small polling margin meant the Terrebonne seat could easily be flipped. In that case, the gap was so small, 44 votes, that it did not need much to basically change the outcome of the election in that riding, he said. Following the recount of more than 61,000 votes, Auguste has 23,352 votes, while Sinclair Designé has 23,351 votes. It was quite close. It's surprising, said Montrealer Thomas Bazin, who was working in Terrebonne. It's really surprising to see that it were this close, echoed Terrebonne resident Marie-Josée Leduc. A single vote that means that there was really a disparity. Maybe everything that happened in the United States with Trump, it surely influenced several people, added Montreal Marie-Josée Chichouin, who works in Terrebonne. I imagine that's what made the difference because historically here, it's the Bloc. So what they're saying here is that people got duped into the propaganda stunt, the marketed campaign into fear Donald Trump, fear these tariffs, and Mark Carney's going to be the savior. Mark Carney, who came from the WEF, who is the former governor of the Bank of England and the Bank of Canada, former advisor to Justin Trudeau, that caused this mayhem that the Liberals were so disgusted by the general public that all of a sudden Mark Carney came in and swooped in to electoral victory. That's what they're saying here. That, just because the Trump rhetoric. By a single vote. Bellon, too, cited Trump-relaxed anxieties as main reason that traditionally Bloc riding went Liberal. The Liberals won extra seats this time around against the Bloc. I think that may be related to the Trump effect, he said. Of course, we'll have to look at exit polls. In a statement on social media, Auguste thanked the citizens of Terrebonne for their trust and promise to get to work. So Vesper Vesper Digital says, to everyone who's shocked about the Terrebonne one vote fiasco, need I remind you of this in this province? Need I remind you, this is the province of, and he lists SNC-Lavalin. That was the big scandal that Justin Trudeau bribed and blackmailed people within his administration, people in his parliamentary cabinets, including his former Attorney General, Jody Wilson-Raybould, to stay quiet about while they were illegally being corrupted, that they were going hand in hand in illegal corruption scheme. SNC-Lavalin. It's also the place of Justin Trudeau. It's also the place of ad scam or SponsorGate, which I believe that's the international NGO that's bringing people into the country on the false equivalency of like student visas, international student administrative assistance. They come into here, they get the refugee status, whatever, and then they go into the United States. I do believe that's the case, but I may be wrong about that. Just this last one should tell you everything you need to know. So he highlights this, where it says a sponsorship program began in 1996. Public money was directed from the Department of Public Works and Government Services to private advertising agencies to promote Canada and the federal government at cultural, community, and sporting events in Quebec. The media began questioning the spending and handling these contracts. 2 Auditor General reports and a public inquiry revealed that the ad agency executives and the Liberal Party officials had corruptly handled more than $300 million, $100 million of which was funneled from the government to the Liberal Party. 5 people were found guilty of fraud, along with several other issues. The scandal helped lead to the government of Chrétien's successor, Paul Martin, being reduced to a minority in 2004. So, amazing that the scandals go back decades. Amazing that the scandals go back decades. And all it took was some just cheap rhetoric, some cheap, good old marketing switcheroo rhetoric to scare people into voting for the Liberals because of Trump. Because they use propaganda techniques. They fear-mongered people to get people into the polls to vote for the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party that's responsible for this. Decades of corruption. So there it is again. I'm not going to read it, but that's more blown up there. And there it is. Liberals won Terrebonne, Quebec riding by 1 vote, but this woman's block ballot wasn't counted. So isn't it amazing that Elections Canada want to do a recount because they believe that the ballots were invalid and there was a bit of scrutiny needed to deal with this one riding? But then they use then they themselves ruined ballots to get the Liberals elected. So it says on the byline here, I wasn't the one who got Elections Canada address wrong in the envelope, she told Radio Canada. Elections Canada glued this label on the envelope. I had nothing to fill. I just had to put my vote in there. So this is from a mail-in ballot where Elections Canada went and took a sticker and covered up the address, making this woman's ballot, this mail-in vote, invalid. So isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting that they want to do a recount in this one particular riding because they believe there was a bit of shenanigans for the Bloc Québécois to get a seat in this riding, but then use the same shenanigans pulling out to this to cancel out the Bloc Québécois to get the Liberals elected? Isn't that kind of strange? Isn't that kind of insane? Shouldn't we be investigating Elections Canada at this point? Do you have trust? Do you have faith that your vote does matter when Elections Canada is doing stuff like this? Or taking ballot boxes home to make it more secure? Take it to some stranger's home or leaving it on the street. Make it secure for your vote. Here's this guy, Kirk Lumva, who says more screw-ups in Canada's election. The Liberal split the Terrebonne riding by one vote after a recount with 11 new ballots appearing, but it's not over yet. A woman sent her ballot in time for the election voting, for the bloc had to return it to her. Elections Canada said the envelope was returned to her because it had the wrong postal code, but Elections Canada is the one that put the wrong address on the label. Elections Canada arbitrarily put the wrong address on to make her ballot invalid to participate in the election. And just like we said when we showed the Elections Canada, when they were taking the ballot boxes home, nobody's going to get blamed for this. Nobody's going to be held to account. Even though it's all caught on camera, people are aware of this. There's more investigations being brought to the light by independent journalists, but nowhere are they going to hold Elections Canada and the whole entire election process to account, especially after what we saw here. How many others like this are out there? In any case, votes should not be misled because of a postal code or something trivial like that. Democracy is too important. What a clown show. So, one vote got the Liberal Party an extra seat. I think they're now at 170, but they're now looking into other ridings or claiming that they need to be recounted, which is going to be more shenanigans. And let me tell you, Mark Carney and the Liberals are desperate for a majority. They're desperate for a majority. And by they, I don't mean the Liberal Party in particular. I mean they, the WEF, the globalist cabal, the Agenda 2030. They're desperate for a majority because if they don't get that majority, then they're going to be a little bit behind on the Great Reset, where you will own nothing. Everything's going to be happy. You'll have a smile on your face while devouring bugs. And you'll have to own an electric vehicle where they can shut off at any point. And you're going to be ruled in this technocratic feudalist society while the ultra-rich, the wealthy-to-do international group can go around jet sailing on their fancy yachts paid with your tax dollars. So they're desperate for a majority. That's why all of a sudden these recounts are appearing out of nowhere. Where a liberal MP won by one singular vote. Even though we know a lot of shenanigans are being done with Elections Canada, and no one's held to account on that. No one. Not a single person. Hey, here at Kitz Corner, we want to thank you, our viewers and our subscribers that tune into Kitz Corner for the latest dives in trending news, political conspiracies, and the craziest of stories. However, being in this business isn't an easy job. Because we're independent, we can dive into stories that the mainstream outlets are afraid to do so. But unfortunately, that doesn't give us the luxury of big advertising or government subsidies. That's why we reach out to you. You can support Kitz Corner and get some cool new threads in the process. Say what? That's right, check out our merch store, where we have a big selection of t-shirts, mugs, stickers, sweaters, bags, and more. All with interesting designs too, like this True North Strong and Free. So if you want to show off your support, go to our website at kitzcorner.net. That's kitzcorner.net. And click the store link at the top of the screen. Or you can scan the QR code provided on screen to get instant access to our merch store. Your support makes a huge difference at what we do here. So why not wear your support too? So go to kitzcorner.net or scan the QR code on your screen to get to our one-of-a-kind Kitz Corner merchandise store. Thank you, and on with the show.